Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of Coach Susan. So I'd like to welcome you all that are tuning in this evening, and thank you so much for joining me. I had to change things up a little bit. I normally broadcast on Saturdays at 12 noon Eastern, but something came up and I am unable to do it. So I know this is a little bit of last notice, but hopefully you'll see it live, and if not, you'll be able to benefit from seeing it in a replay or over at my YouTube station, which is my name, SusanDintino. I'm going to go SusanDintino.com. So let me tell you a little bit about myself before we get into the topic this evening. Basically, I have been doing this work full-time since 2004. In that year, I was certified as an angel therapy practitioner by Doreen Virtue, and since then I've been privileged to work on her staff and done quite a few things on my own as well. So I do readings, I teach workshops on meditation, the chakra system, all different types of things. And to really learn a lot about me, you can tune into my website, which is SusanDintino.com, which I mentioned in the beginning. I also am a published author with Hay House. The name of my book is Songs of My Life, Slightly Out of Tune. As the name would suggest, it's a humorous approach to some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. And actually, that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. We're going to be talking about books. I have people reach out to me so often and ask me questions about publishing, self-publishing. They've got a book. How do they begin? So I thought that this would be a good time now to really take a look at that subject. So much of what I'm going to be discussing with you this evening will be from my own personal experience, because obviously that's my best known information, is what is coming from me personally. So I'm going to share that with you. I listed a bunch of the links in the books that I'm going to be talking about this evening on my fan page on Facebook, and it's already up there. So if you go to Susan Dintino Public Figure, I pinned it to the top, so you know that all you'll have to do is copy and paste. So don't worry about taking notes during this session. You'll be able to get the information as soon as we're done. I also would like to tell people, if you are first time to a Coach Susan session, this is really a session designed to help you build your spiritual business. So I don't do personal mini readings during this session. I do have a radio show, The Night Shift, which comes into your computer every Tuesday at 7 p.m. It's on W4CY radio. That's 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. And I try and get some mini readings into each and every one of those radio shows. I also do new moon and full moon broadcasts as close to those days as I can possibly do it. And I do that as well with the mini readings. So I use that to get that type of information, the intuitive advice you're looking for, in addition, of course, to doing it with my website and booking an appointment with me. But this is really all about you and learning how to really get your spiritual practice where you would like to be. As I said in the beginning, this is the 13th episode, so if you missed any, want to know what these might be about, check out my YouTube station. They're all listed there under Coach Susan and a playlist, so you can take a look. We dealt with everything from angel parties to anything you can imagine so far. So today we're going to be focusing on books and how you get your book published. And as I said, I'm going to be using my own experience. So the first thing to discuss is, how do you go about writing a book? Say you've got a great idea and you really just don't know how to begin. So I've got a few suggestions to really get you in the habit of writing, because to create a book, the most important thing is to write. And you're going to find throughout this discussion we're having this evening, I'm going to be talking quite a bit about things you're going to have to research, because I've really found that looking into the different avenues that I'm going to be discussing will be very beneficial to you, and Google or whatever search engine you like to use will be your best friend. And you'll see when you go to the links, I really looked through all the different things and found what I thought was one of the best links for me to provide for you. And again, that's over on SusanDintino on Facebook, my fan page. So the first thing again is I really recommended some books that will help you get started with your writing. And there's a great list of books there. I'm familiar with the book by Stephen King on writing. There's Writing to the Bones. Those two books I'm familiar with, and I have used those as motivation for my own writing. But two that weren't mentioned that I also think are very beneficial is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and she also has another book that's recently published. It's called It's Never Too Late to Try Again. So for those of you that might feel that a book is a dream that you can't manifest because of your age, and that's primarily what this book deals with, Ms. Cameron quickly puts that myth to rest and letting you know that it's never too late to try again. So I would highly suggest, as you're beginning to approach this whole idea of writing, to look at one of those books and just get some ideas of what's expected. How can you get your idea to paper? Then the other thing that I think is a really great idea is to start doing some writing. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by creating a blog. This also can be a very simple thing to do, and there's many templates out there that are free. And as I said before, I have the link up there which gives you an abundance of different ways to create your own blog. Now, what is the point of doing a blog? Well, first of all, it kind of pushes you to put pen to paper or fingers to computer keyboard, whichever way you choose to write. When you begin a blog, it can give you a really good idea of what expertise you have that you would like to share. And one of the things that I would like to tell you is that really they say all the books have been written, and in that way you could probably say, yes, that's true. I mean, how many different ways can you talk about something like the law of attraction? However, every time a new book comes out that touches a specific part of the population in a different way, the book jumps on the bestseller list. Asking It Is Given by Jerry and Esther Hicks had come out quite a few years prior to The Secret, and yet so many more people are familiar with something like The Secret because it's more recent. And yes, the topic is very similar. So the reason I'm pointing this out is just because you might have an idea for a topic that's been utilized before, don't let that discourage you. You're going to put a different spin on this topic. You're going to be reaching to an audience that somebody else hasn't touched, and you're going to hit somebody's aha moment that nobody else has done. So if you're really feeling guided to do a book, I really would follow that guidance and just take it one step at a time. So by doing something like beginning with a blog, it really, first of all, gets you writing, as I said, but it also begins to give you an idea of what your audience might be. How many people are reading your blog? What is your blog about? Depending on what your subject matter is, you can actually get a book out of blog postings. For instance, a year ago, well, this was a few years ago, and I don't even remember, it was sometime in August, I decided to do a daily blog. And every day I would put it on my website, and it's under Susanisms, and very frankly, I don't remember the last time I did something on that page, but I was very faithful for a year that every day I put a post up on my website, which is where my blog is found. Now, I had my blog set up on my website so that it would automatically be posted on Facebook. So each and every day I would select a picture because I found that that created more interest than just strictly text. I would create a picture, I'd get some picture, and what I have really learned to do is use my own photographs. And the reason that I do that is because I don't have to worry about copyright. So when I see something that really appeals to me, now it's so easy to do with your phones, smartphones, iPhones, whatever you have, Androids, it's very easy to get pictures of things that might speak to whatever the topic is of your blog. And I also started collecting quotes that really inspired me. So each and every day I would have a quote, a picture that went with the quote, and a topic, and I would say maybe tops of 50 to 150 words. It was just like something that I would do. If I thought that I was going to be busy, I might get ahead a couple days, but I did that for a solid year. And now I have a book that if I wanted to, I could look into publishing, because I have 365 entries, and this is really all just from writing for my blog. So you can actually get information for your book by writing a blog. So it's a great way to start getting yourself out there. One of the other things that I would really suggest is that if you're really having a great deal of success with your blog and people are really getting an interest in it, you can actually find sponsors that'll, want to be on your blog page. And again, this is all about research, looking into the people that are drawn to your blog, looking at the people that are reaching out to you via your blog. And this is where your social media is such a powerful tool, because as with me, I found that people would have to click on the link. It took them to my website, but it really got, because once in a while it wouldn't get posted as it should on my Facebook page, and I would notice that my responses were down when it wasn't posted on social media. So it's a great tool to use, because you're getting your blog, it goes up on social media, then it takes people back to your website. And if you've got services or anything that you're selling on your website, then it's a great way to pull them back in. And again, I named mine Susanisms. You can come up with something catchy, or it can just be your name. It doesn't have to be anything other than what you really are trying to talk about. You might want to say something like daily guidance from your angels, and then write a little blog about an angel channeling you might do. There's all different ways that you can approach it. The most important thing with this, and I'll be saying this over and over again throughout our session together, is if you want to write, guess what? You have to write. And I know that might sound rather absurd, but personally I find that can be really challenging. You're waiting to get motivated, you're waiting for something to hit you, and it just doesn't seem like anything's there. So by writing a daily blog, it kind of forces you to have something to say every day. And if every day seems like a bit much for you, what you could definitely do is, like, say once a week or every other day. There's all different ways to approach it, but highly suggest that as a first way to get your feet wet with it. Another thing that can be really beneficial is writing for magazines. Again, we're talking, and really, I should say this, most of what I'm discussing, although you could put it in a fiction genre, because it really in many ways does relate to both. Most of what I'm talking about today is nonfiction. So some of what I'm discussing you could pertain to both, but because my experience is principally with nonfiction literature, I do write poetry as well, but most of mine is nonfiction. So that's what I'm discussing versus you really thinking about a novel. That's a whole different type of thing. But that being said, you still have to write one way or the other, whether you're looking at fiction, which obviously is made up kind of stuff, or you're looking at nonfiction, which is truth telling. One way or the other, you've got to put pen to paper. So as I said, magazine articles are another great way for you to get your name out there, for you to do some writing. There are a multitude of different magazines out there in the New Age community that will take your submissions and you get published for free. Now again, obviously you've got to watch your grammar, your spelling, all of these things. You don't have to be maniacal about it, because most of these magazines will have an editor and they'll look over your work and go through it. But you want to make sure that it's legible when you're sending it in, that your best foot is put forward with this writing that you're submitting. And again, there's all different topics. I was writing for a while for a magazine called Light Bridges, and it was actually out of Buffalo, New York, and it came out, I want to say, every few months. And I would have all different topics that I would talk about. For instance, one time I was writing about my knee because my knee was really bothering me, and I was working on doing healing work on my knee. And I think the name of the article was Talking to My Knee, you know, and I try and get my writing with humor whenever I'm talking about anything. Because first of all, I love to make people laugh. I personally love to laugh. And I think it's a great teaching tool. I think it kind of gives that extra punch when you sprinkle humor in what you're doing. So I went into this whole soliloquy of this conversation I was having with my knee, trying to get to the root of why it was bothering me from a metaphysical standpoint. So I would write for Light Bridges, like I said, with topics like that. And again, I had to submit an article, and usually that's what you'll have to do. You'll have to submit an article for their approval, come up with some ideas that you might have, and then based on what their requirements are, and if you two can come to terms, they'll start publishing you. Now, when that occurs, for most of the magazines like that I'm aware of, you don't get paid. They're publishing you, you're getting your name out there. They'll usually give you a few lines on the bottom of your article that say a little bit about yourself. So, you know, great place to promote your website and anything that you might be doing. I know at the time there was a way I could promote in my workshops if I had something coming up. So magazine articles, that route. You can also go the route, and I do again have a link talking about looking at getting paid for your magazine articles, where you can get into writing for a magazine and getting paid for what you do. I've also done that type of writing, and I've written 2 different articles for magazines that were in Florida, pretty much like tourist type magazines. The one that I wrote was about my trip to England, and I wrote everything about that when I went and had a wonderful time looking at some of the spiritual sites, Stonehenge, things like that. And I wrote an article about that, and then I also wrote an article on meditation. Both those articles were published, and I was paid for these articles. What I found by doing this was that I didn't like it very much. I personally found it to be too restrictive. I kept on pitching to these magazines and articles that would be more creative. I had a great idea to write articles called Views from a Vespa, because I have a Vespa in Florida, which I drive all over the place. It's a pink Vespa, and I thought that there would be ways that I could talk about, you know, the island and you know, again, put a little bit of like a humorous approach to it. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Dave Barry, but he had an ongoing column. I don't think he still does. He writes humor, a lot of fiction with him, but that was the kind of thing I was really interested in doing, and they weren't interested in that type of work from me. So I, you know, again, they still send me ideas once in a while, but you know what it felt like to me? Like I was writing a term paper. There were too many requirements. You know, like you couldn't just say something without backing up what you said with facts, so to speak. So if you said something, you had to make sure, like for instance, with my meditation article, I had to interview people that knew everything there was to know about transcendental meditation. And even though I knew quite a bit about it personally, they want sources that you can cite. So for me, it wasn't a fit. However, I got paid. It was nice having the money coming in, and it got me to writing. So 2 avenues that you can pursue: a blog, writing for magazines, either free or paid. And again, these links are over on SusanDintino. This is going to give you some real encouragement and motivation to get writing in a short essay type thing on a regular basis. And Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, I highly recommend, because there's a big component of that has to do with writing, and it really does open up your creativity. So if you're not familiar with that book, I highly recommend it if it's something that you're just pursuing right now. So definitely, like I said, these are all things that I have done. These are all things that in some respect have assisted me, and it's really helped me to decide the type of writing I did and did not want to do. Not that long ago, I was approached to write for a senior citizen center that was near where I live, and I went for the meeting and everything, and when they started talking about it, I just knew it wasn't for me. And I couldn't believe, because usually it takes a lot for me to walk away from something like that, but the more I heard about it, and it was going in and interviewing people, and then you had to be cautious, and you had to be cautious because you couldn't in any way, you had to stick to what the philosophy was of this center, and some of it was not the same philosophy I shared. And it wasn't that I had a problem with the philosophy, but I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to write like that. And so much about writing is speaking your truth, whatever type of writing you're doing. And that's what they talk about it. When you write what you know, even if you're doing fiction, if you read the best fiction writers, somehow, some way, they're writing about what they know, or they go do a ton of research about whatever it is that they're writing. And this is really something to keep in mind, because I'm going to be bringing it up again, that there is research involved. It's not like you just sit down and allow all of this to flow. You're going to find, no matter what your topic is, that most likely you're going to have to investigate some of the things that you want to really express to your audience. So this is, again, a good jump start. And if you've just tuned in, we're talking about books today, about your writing. I am not doing any readings. I'm going to pause here for a moment and just take a look and see what questions there might be, if there are any. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we've got Christine Taylor. Hello, Lori from Hawaii. Hey, Dawn. All right, we're going to talk about that in a minute. That's a good question. Nice to see you, Sherry. Okay, not doing readings. Hey. Hello, Linda. Linda, no readings. Okay, I'm going to go back to this, but yes, again, if you've tuned in, I'm sorry to disappoint anybody that thinks that this is readings. I don't do many readings. This is a coaching session to help you with your spiritual business. So just to repeat that. So I'm going to go to that question about getting published and not getting published, because I've had experience with both. Back in, I think it was back in 2000, and prior to that, I had gotten an idea for a children's book. And it's interesting, it was when I was doing The Artist's Way. And this idea just started downloading for me while I was doing that program. And as I was working on it, I started really getting all of these ideas of how to really bring this book to fruition. And I just decided that in my eyes, it was such an important idea that I didn't want to get involved with trying to get published, that I was going to get self-published. And I'm actually going to hold the book up here now for you. Okay, so this was my first self-published book. And I know it's coming in up backwards. I'll just open it up a little bit so you can kind of get an idea of it, okay? The name of the book is A Year of Me. And when I got the idea, I wanted to create a book that would be very interactive with a child and a caregiver. And I really designed it to really encourage conversation between a caregiver and a child on topics that they wouldn't ordinarily discuss. So each chapter is the month, okay? So January was, the topic for January was all about yourself. What is it about yourself that you like? And it's all poetry, which I wrote. I wrote all the poetry. And my daughter, who is an artist, actually did the illustrations. And we did them in such a way that they would be like child's drawings, okay? So we're working on this together. And there was a lot of trial and error. I wouldn't even begin to tell you how long this book actually took to complete. And while we were doing it, we were thinking that we were going to just sell it, like, how they do those home recipe books or whatever. But because of the images and everything, there was just no way. So we had to get a graphic artist to convert our images. There was many technical things that we learned. Okay, so here is what I'm going to tell you. Now, this was back in 2000. Self-publishing is much easier now, and I am talking about a children's book, but I just wanted to share with you my own experience. So when we did this, we had to get a graphic artist to convert my daughter's images. Then we had to decide on the layout of the book, and all of this was trial and error. So this was all based really on the whole idea that I didn't want to reach out to a publisher. I wanted to do it myself because I didn't want those rejection letters, and I just felt so strongly about the project. So what I had to do was get an ISBN number for the book and a barcode. You can do all of that again yourself, but now there's companies out there that will help you do it. Now, what made this a more challenging project was because there was 4-color print on every page. So printing was a big expense. However, we just stayed local. Now, you could certainly investigate going outside the country if you're looking at publishing a book that's got pictures in it. And again, self-publishing. Not that long ago, and I'll talk about my book that's published in a few minutes, I was at a book signing with that book, and I was next to a graphic like a cartoonist. I can't remember what he called himself. I want to say a graphic artist, but that's not it. But he did this book that was like a Superman comic book, but it was very updated, and he had done this whole book. It'll come to me in a minute what those types of books are called. And he did it totally on print on demand. And he was telling me that it was relatively inexpensive and it was easy breezy to do. So I think since my experience, they have come a long way in enabling you to do that, especially if your book is something that you are just going to be doing, like a black and white book, a spiritual book. It's really now easy to self-publish and print on demand. Another huge avenue that you can look into is creating an ebook, not even going to print. And I know Amazon is a big one for doing that. But again, I don't have personal experience with these things, so I am talking to you about my own experience. But I gave you some ideas of places to go to look for the information. The only caution I want to put out there about self-publishing is to make sure that you don't get involved with a vanity press. Now, what does that mean? Well, that's a slang term for the idea that somebody tells you that your book is wonderful. If only you pay $10,000, they're going to get it to a point that they're going to be able to get it out there in X, Y, and Z. Really investigate what they're giving you and if it's worth it, because I can't tell you how many people that have approached me after the fact and told me that they spent this abundant amount of money, now have boxes of books that they can't move, and they're beside themselves. Because when you're writing, that's the joy and the love. And those of us that are creative and want to get a message out there, that's what drives us. It's wanting people to read and hear something that might in some way help them. So we're all caught up in that. Well, that is just very fun. But I will tell you, just like my first book, A Year of Me, when it's done, I'm thinking, well, this is my life purpose. Oprah, call me. I'm sure this is going to be your first children's book for your Oprah book club. I was just sure of that. As I said, we published this in 2000. I created my own company, an LLC, to distribute it or whatever. And I will tell you, I still have boxes of books. So the fun part is the, writing, but then you've got to market it and you've got to get out there. One of the things I didn't do, talking about research, I got to be friends with a buyer from Barnes & Noble, and she told me, your book is great. She said it's priced too high. And basically, I wasn't even covering our costs on the book. I priced it at $18.95. And She told me the price point for a children's book is $10. And see, had I done some research on that, I wouldn't have put a price on the book, because right now I sell them for $10. So I wouldn't have put that price on the book in the beginning. In gift shops and things like that, the book did well. But if we were in a store where there was all these markdowns on children's books and things like that, it was difficult to move the book. So that's an example of how I should have done a little bit of research prior to putting the book out there. But again, right now, what I would say is really investigate it. If you have a story to tell and you don't want to go the traditional route of getting published, then really investigate self-publishing. It's a very viable tool. There's great books out there, great websites out there that can take you step by step. And again, I don't have personal experience with it. However, I have heard that creating an Amazon ebook is extremely easy. So again, if maybe you've got a book and you just want to get it out there ASAP, investigate doing that. And speaking of the writing and what we've been talking about, when I was doing my other book, Songs of My Life Slightly Out of Tune, which I will tell you, and I say this all the time, War and Peace probably took less time to write than that book. The title changed a million times, and I finally hired a writing editor. And the reason I did that was because I was so close to being done and I was just stalled. So this person not only helped me with editing and giving me ideas, she was also a writing coach. So we would talk on the phone once a week. She lived in Colorado. I was in Buffalo at the time. We'd talk on the phone once a week. Okay, how many pages did you get done? Send them to me. Then I would send them to her, and she would have some suggestions as to how I could change things. Now, I felt this book I was really going to try and get published. As a matter of fact, I had a huge affirmation on my computer saying that this book was published. I just never thought about anything else but this book being published. So I really did just focus on creating the best possible version of it that I could, and just went with it. So let me just show you the cover of this book. So this is the book that I had published, and this is Songs of My Life, Slightly Out of Tune. This was published in 2013, and it was published by Hay House, okay? So I get the book all done, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. A person that I knew somebody at Hay House. I was talking about it. I had finished with my writing coach, and I was all ready to go, and I'm talking to this person about the book, and you know, he said to me, "Is it done?" And I said, "It's all finished. It's ready to go." He said, "Send it over." And I did. And he approached Hay House with it, and they enjoyed it, and that was it. The rest is history. In 2013, Hay House published my book, which I'm extremely proud of. That being said, then again, we come back to the marketing aspect of it, and I actually hired somebody to help me do the marketing, an organization that promoted me, got me on radio shows, got reviews. Real important thing is getting reviews for your book. And speaking of that, when you're writing your book, if you know people that have got really good reputations in the metaphysical world that are willing to write either your foreword or some endorsements for the book, anything like that you can do. And this goes for whether you're self-publishing or whether you're getting it published. Any endorsements that you can get like that are really going to be beneficial. Now, when you're looking to get your book published, I believe Hay House now won't even look at a submission without a literary agent. And that's a whole different subject. And again, I put the link up that discusses that. Because I did not have a literary agent, didn't work with a literary agent, I can't give you a first-person experience with it. However, what a literary agent does is if they believe in your work, they will take your work and then they will go and promote you to all the different publishers based on what type of publisher would be interested in what work you have. Now, you'll hear many people will say that it's impossible to get a literary agent. And one thing that I found is that when you're trying to get your name out there in this book business, it really, we don't want to put it out there. I'm not going to say that negatives about it. However, it's challenging because there are so many people out there that have got, names. They've written a bunch of books. People buy their books just based on their name. So when you're the new kid in the block, you really have to do the majority of promotion on your own. You have to be the one that's willing to push yourself and really get out there. When Songs of My Life came out, I had t-shirts made with the cover of the book on the front, and then on the back I put something, it escapes me right now, but something like, as if, how when you buy those t-shirts at a rock concert, appearing, something like that on the back of it. But I would do anything to get that type of attention for the book. And that's really what you have to be willing to do once you've got your book out there. So just because, however, you can't get published, you've tried, first of all, keep trying to get published if that's your goal. Going the self-publishing route is really something to consider if you believe very strongly in what it is that you've got to say and you want to get your book out there. In other words, I wouldn't let anything stop you, because if you feel it's something that is beneficial, believe me, it is. And what I really learned to do, especially with my children's book, because I have given so many of those books away, and what I really did was I had to redefine what I considered success. If you would have talked to me back in 1999 when I was just getting the book done and everything, my idea of success would be that it would be on the bestseller list. A children's book on the bestseller list, anything that I wrote on the bestseller list. This was it. And it was never for me about the fame or the fortune. What it was for me is I wanted to impact as many people as I could. That's what drove me, really making a difference in multitudes of people. And what I have learned, especially with the Year of Me, because I've had parents, teachers, children come up to me, and even though I haven't sold millions of books, they've made a difference in these kids' lives. So I re-examined my definition of success, because very honestly, when A Year of Me didn't do what I thought it should have, it kind of pulled me back from writing anymore. And then I just looked at it and I thought, you know what? No, you got to keep writing. You got to keep getting your stuff out there. You really have to. It's what inspires you. It's what motivates you, helps you to jump out of bed every morning. And I just looked at it that way, that even though rather than 10,000, it was 10, those 10 people were enjoying it. I got great reviews from everybody that read both books. So I just had to re-examine the way I looked, especially right now with the way the book industry is changing. With Kindles, with the e-readers. Many people aren't buying books anymore. Personally, I don't think anything replaces the feel of a real book. And I do have an e-reader that I'll use at times, but I prefer a real book. So it just depends. But because that industry is changing, how many bookstores do we know that have closed? It's really negatively impacted the entire book business. So if you look at it that way, then just like Don Miguel Ruiz says, you don't take it personally. You're putting your best effort out there. You're putting your best work out there. And then you really have to just allow it to go where it's meant to go. So let me take a look again and see. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, Lori, good. I'm glad you're getting some ideas. Can you suggest magazines, please? Okay. Natural Awakenings is a magazine that I think is out in many different areas. I think, like for instance, I know there's one in Fort Myers. I know there's one here in Buffalo where I am right now. So really what I would suggest you do is look at the magazines that are usually given away. Like we have a magazine out here called Art Voice, which is more looking for like artsy articles. Those magazines that you might see as you walk walk into a restaurant lined up. Natural Awakenings is a big one, and I'm almost positive they are across the country. Like I said, this that I wrote for here was Light Bridges, based on a store that's here. So that was a local magazine. So what I would do is investigate metaphysical magazines in your area. As I said, I know Natural Awakenings is one. As far as being published in a magazine, if you look in just about any magazine, they will have submission requirements in the beginning of the magazine, and they'll give you ideas of what it is that you have to do. If you don't get anything like that, what you can do is look at the contact information, and obviously not the subscription information, but the contact information, and just reach out. I mean, that was the way I got my gig in Florida, was just reaching out to the magazine and saying, I'm interested in writing for you, and then they told me to send in a sample for them. So you got to do a little bit of work. I know quite a few of my friends write for different magazines about fairies, angels, and they're very esoteric, so it does take some research, but from my experience, there's these type of magazines in just about every market. So it's just reaching out and saying, hey, I've got a great idea about building fairy houses, would you be interested? And then make sure it's your best piece of writing. Make sure that your spelling is correct and your punctuation is correct. Most of the time they want you to submit as far as a Word document, single spaced. You know, I know there's always big discussion with the double space between the period and the first letter of the next sentence. I have found that most submissions don't want that. So I'm an English major, so I know from college I tend to look at some of these grammatical things, but everybody has submission requirements, even if you're looking to submit your book, okay? For instance, I'm in the process of submitting an oracle deck right now, and I got a very detailed, line-by-line requirements for what I have to do to submit. So, you know, that's what you have to do. Most places will not just accept a submission, and they'll say it right there. If you look, like I said, if you check Hay House now, I'm almost positive they will not accept a submission without a literary agent. So they want that middleman. I don't know of anybody right now that will take a submission like just sending your work in. So query letters, and that's Query, are a wonderful tool to use to reach out. And again, the templates for that and all the information about doing that are available online. Writing a query letter about your idea. And when you're thinking about your idea, even though it might change, like Songs of My Life, that title changed a multitude of times throughout the writing. I find if you start with a title, it really keeps you in direction. And more times than not, it might change by the end, but starting with the title will really help you keep your writing directed. So I hope that answered your questions about magazines. Like I said, I know there's all different ones that you can look into locally, and that's the key. Starting is looking local. Okay, so hello from Vancouver, Wendy. And Mariana, thank you for that question. So many angel reading coaches. Mariana Taylor, hi. Okay, hey Louie. Okay, Charlene, can you please also suggest how to find a professional editor? Charlene, I think that is a great question, and I will tell you, I would not recommend the person that I used, and that's why I'm not going to talk about them right now. Knowing what I know now, it was quite expensive, the amount that I was being charged, and what happened was, one of the things that she had promised me to do was to submit my work to different publishers. This was all part of the contract we had, but I will admit we had nothing in writing. And so when I got done making that last payment, it was like she fell off the planet. And I wasn't able to get a hold of her. And she was a great coach during the process, but she didn't fulfill the obligations that she had made to me. So looking for an editor, what I would strongly suggest is, again, you go online and you see what people are out there. Your best resource is somebody that's already used an editor. Now remember, you're hiring this person. So if there's somebody that piques your interest, and there's many freelance editors out there. So if you go online and you Google, believe me, there will be a multitude that will come up. Ask for references. Ask for references. Remember, you're hiring this person. I know so many of us feel a little bit off doing that, but you're the employer. You're hiring them. You're going to be paying them. So make sure that this person has references. Once you decide on what it is you're going to do, put it in writing and really have a contract drawn up. That was a mistake I made. Again, whether I would have done anything with the contract or not, but it would have been a nice tool to have had, so I could have said, hey, you promised this and that. Editors are key. Even after my whole editing process, Hay House did go through quite a few edits in my book. So ultimately, if you're published, you will be edited as well. That's why usually from the time your book's accepted for publication, there's usually a good year between then and when the book actually comes out. Personally, I wish I had somebody, Charlene, I would highly recommend. The one that I used, I would not recommend because, like I said, it's an integrity issue, and at the end, she did not fulfill her promise to me. Like I said, like you're doing anything, research it and get references. Make sure that this person is going to do what they say they're going to do. But a good editor is essential. I had a great one over at Hay House because they're really going to make sure that your book is as tight and perfect as it can be. And if you're submitting your book for publication, having it edited, you have to do both steps. Personally, I think because it's difficult to be your own editor, number one. And number two, you're going to miss things. Some of the greatest writers, you'll see that they'll say, like in the beginning of the book, and they'll acknowledge some people who read it the first time. And this will be phenomenal writers, you know, and they'll say, oh, thank you so much to so-and-so who read it and made me see X, Y, and Z. So you need a fresh pair of eyes to look at your work. So that's a great question. Okay, and again, just a reminder that I'm not doing readings. Okay, so Marianne is saying she has so much material, but she doesn't know how to produce it. Okay, Mariana, what I would suggest you do is that idea that I spoke of a few minutes ago, and that is to get a title. Come up with a title. What is it that you would like to say in your book? And then what you're going to do is kind of work backwards. You've got all these different pieces. Going back to my own example of these blogs that I did every day, when I looked at them and was trying to come up with a title for the book, and I'm really thinking about doing that as an ebook, I was getting daily affirmations for a well-lived life. I came up with that title. I will tell you that so many of my titles, A Year of Me, Songs of My Life, came to me in meditation. The title, A Year of Me, I actually wrote it in the margin when I was doing The Artist's Way. So I really think you need to quiet your mind. Highly recommend a daily meditation practice as a big component to doing your writing. But start grouping your writing together like that. Come up with the title. What is it you want your book to say? And then see where those pieces fit in. You might have more than one book going on. And so what you might want to do is take, 10 things that you've written and use it for this book, and then set your other pieces aside for the other book. But I think having a title just gives you a focus. Even though, as I said before, it might change, it gives you a focus of what you want your work to say. So that should help you. So, okay, Carol, hello. Hello, Dawn. You know what, Dawn? What I'm going to do is when I get done, I'm going to see if I can find a link for you for the best writing editors. But what I will say is that if you Google writing editors, believe me, you will come up with a list. And I'm sure that What I have noticed too, doing this work, watch, because usually the first few, when you're Googling something, the first few will be ads. Stay away from the ads. So the first few that'll come up are going to say ads. Keep scrolling down until you come up to a suggestion that is not an ad, because for the most part you don't want ads. All those links I put up were ones that I went so that they were more of an unbiased opinion, like the best writing books I think are up there, the best free blog things to do. I scrolled past the ads, but I will take a look at that after this is done, and I'll get that link up to you. But believe me when I tell you, so much of the work that I do, Google is my best friend. So really use that avenue when you're pursuing it. But I will definitely see if I can find that. Hey, Bridget, do you do private coaching? Yes, Mariana, I do private coaching. I do intuitive coaching, and I do, again, being an English major, you know, I definitely have worked with people working on these types of things. However, I am not an editor, and I'm not somebody that could really, I wouldn't promote myself that way. There's people out there that are much better suited for it, and for me, I could, you know, maybe jumpstart and give you some tools to get started, but as far as once you really get into the process, I would recommend going to somebody that does this professionally. If you're interested in private coaching, please feel free to message me on Facebook and we can talk about it. Oh, Bridget, you're so cute. Hello, Ian. Yes, Heather, I agree. Books are the best. Yeah, and Lori is saying so true. Real books have more energy. I just love the feel of a real book. Sometimes when I'll get a book as an ebook, I'll actually go and actually buy the real book because I'm enjoying it so much. And there's things I would like to write in the margins and things, and I'll actually go out and buy the real book. I love the way a book, when you open it up, like just the way the smell of a new book. I just totally adore books. Hey, Louie, so nice to see you. Yes, so Lori is saying, yes, we have Natural Awakening, such a good magazine. It really is. That is a really good one, and it's funny because it's one that I've always thought that I should submit to, and unfortunately, life has had other plans as I'm starting to try and get my life together I'm really working on my guidebook for my Oracle deck right now. So I'm just trying to get that writing done. So believe me, I hear what you're saying. But that is a really good magazine to write for. A lot of exposure with that magazine. Yeah, Carol's saying there's nothing better than a good bookstore. That is for sure. Hey, Charlene. Yes, Charlene, thank you for mentioning that. I was going to bring that up. Charlene is saying she also loves The Right to Write, and that's R-I-G-H-T, To Write by Julia Cameron. That's a great book. Also, Veins of Gold by Julia Cameron. I interviewed her on one of my radio shows that I had a few years ago, and she is one of these women that I just think is incredibly fascinating. And it's so funny because I get nervous when I'm interviewing these types of people, and really I didn't have to worry because she did all the talking. But her new book, It's Never Too Late to Try Again, is very similar to An Artist's Way as far as the program goes. And very simply, the Artist's Way is a 3-month program. Each week there's certain questions that you answer. You do these daily morning pages, which really helps with your writing. And then she has activities. You have to do an artist date, which you go by yourself. That's the only thing that you have to do is go alone. And I used to love going to bookstores on my artist day. So yeah, Charlene, thank you for mentioning that. That is a great book. And yes, as she's saying, there's a writing exercise to go with every chapter of this book. And hi, Pam, hello from Minnesota. Okay, Ian is saying, hi, Susan, do you feel your English major has helped you in the work you do? I'm in the middle of choosing a major. You know, Ian, yes, I really do, because of course I love my metaphysical work. But for me, I have looked to the wonderful literatures I've read, the tools that I got. I took quite a bit of philosophy in college as well as English. And it really has given me a really solid foundation for my writing. I took creative writing. I actually then got a degree in English education. I went to the University of Buffalo. So I taught for a bit, and one of my favorite courses to teach was creative writing. So I think those aspirations can very much go hand in hand. I think it helps with speaking when you major in English, as well as helping with your writing. So I really feel, yes, it was a strong foundation for me. I was in school in the rather radical times, back in the early 70s. Not that I want to date myself too much, but it was a great time to go to school because it was so liberal. And the tools that I got there between my English background and my philosophy background helped me immensely as I proceeded in my career. And so much in this as well. Like I said, my love of books came as a child, so that's really what led me to getting involved with doing the whole writing the blogs and loving books. And as a child, I used to have one book, Big Red, that I wouldn't read because I didn't want it to be over. And at the time, you know, we didn't have the resources where I could go and just buy books. So I would, when I get a book, it's like I have all the Harry Potter books all lined up in the hardcovers on my bookshelves. I adore books. So the fact that I've got books out there, that's what I mean about really defining success. The fact that I was able to bring books out there that people have read other than myself has given me a great source of satisfaction. But Ian, that's a great question, and I would say yes to that for sure. Oh, Louie, thank you for everything. So, one of the things before we close, is we're at now 5 to 9, I just want to say I do my very best to try and be consistent with these broadcasts that I do. But as I said, you know, something came up for me. I would have been coming on this Saturday. So I know somebody had suggested that maybe we would create events, and I would love to be able to do that as long as I know. Literally, I thought, because of what had played out, I thought, when can I possibly do this? And tonight was the only night. So I appreciate your flexibility. I apologize that it wasn't consistent with what I had said, but I always do my best to come in and really keep my promise. So I know I had a great... And we're back. I think we lost me for a minute. I know I had a question from somebody that I wasn't able to get to, but what we're going to do is we're going to do a Q&A next time we meet, which will be, excuse me, the 29th at 12 noon, which is Saturday. We'll come together right on this page, 29th, for Facebook Live, and we're going to do another Q&A. And I'd like to know what subjects that we could still talk about that you're interested in. Just a reminder, all of the videos up till now are posted in a playlist over on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me. I know for many of you it's a lovely summer evening, so for taking the time to post your comments and questions, I'm very grateful. And for my friends out there, thank you for your hellos. You're all my friends out there. Thank you so much for joining me, and until we meet again, remember, life is a journey. Enjoy the ride. I'll see you next time.